Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're joining us today, well, chances are you, like, honestly, millions of people have maybe found yourself operating from this quiet but really pervasive psychological place.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds something like, I'm not quite good enough, or maybe more formally, I'm not okay.
Right, that core feeling.
Exactly, that feeling of inadequacy, maybe perceived unworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the operating system behind so many self-sabotaging choices, maybe toxic relationship patterns.
That really can be.
So today, we're not just looking at that feeling. We're aiming to fundamentally rebuild the psychological architecture needed to shift out of that position, hopefully permanently.
That's absolutely the mission today. We're diving deep into self-worth, and we're using a really powerful idea as our guide, life positions from transactional analysis. So many of us, maybe without even realizing it, default to that I'm not okay, you're okay position.
Right, the feeling that everyone else has it figured out, but not me.
Precisely. So our goal is to pull together the science, everything from cognitive dissonance, attachment theory, self-compassion, even some behavioral economics.
Whoa, okay. That's a lot.
It is, but the aim is to give you a framework, practical tools to consciously and firmly step into that healthier stance. I'm okay, you're okay.
So translating the theory into something you can actually do minute by minute.
That's the idea, making it real, making it behavioral.
It sounds like a huge shift.
Yeah.
Because we're moving away from that sort of reactive, maybe emotional position.
Yeah.
What TA might call the child or maybe the victim position.
Exactly. And stepping fully into the competence, the accountability, the inherent acceptance of what TA calls the adult position.
Okay. And just to be clear, for everyone listening, we've got a really rich stack of sources here. They don't just talk about, feeling good temporarily. They get into the mechanism of being structurally sound psychologically.
That's vital. Because to get where we want to go, this I'm okay place, we really need to understand where we often start. That sense of I'm not okay, it's often just an unexamined default.
Yeah, it just feels normal.
But it's built, it's constructed, like brick by behavioral brick. So we're going to look first at how we build that internal architecture. Starting with the most basic unit, how we actually define ourselves.
Okay, so let's unpack this, maybe starting with Carol Dweck's work on mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the most basic way we frame our worth is, well, it's all in the stories we tell ourselves about our abilities, our mindset.
Exactly. We absolutely have to start there. The difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Yeah.
It fundamentally defines whether you see life as, opportunities to learn or just a series of unavoidable, really high-stakes tests.
Okay, break that down. Fixed mindset first.
So in the fixed mindset, you basically believe your core traits, your talents, your intelligence, they're just fixed. They're like carved in stone. You've got what you've got, and that's it.
Right. And if your abilities are set in stone, then every single encounter, a job interview, maybe a tough conversation, trying something new, it becomes a test of your inherent worth.
A judgment.
So if you succeed, great. But if you hit a setback, maybe you get rejected, make a big mistake, even just get some constructive criticism.
Yeah.
That feedback instantly gets translated into evidence that you're fundamentally lacking something, that you just don't have the right stuff.
Oof. Yeah.
And that seems like a massive liability if you're trying to maintain an I'm okay stance.
It's the ultimate liability, really. Now, contrast that with the growth mindset.
Okay.
Here, you believe that talents and abilities are just, they're starting points. They can be developed through effort, through smart strategies over time.
So setbacks aren't devastating.
We're not seen as judgments on your character. They're just diagnostic information. The whole attitude shifts, from that really pessimistic, I fail, therefore I am a failure.
Yeah, which feels awful.
Right, to something much more robust, more functional. Like, okay, what can I learn here? How do I need to adjust my approach?
That sounds fantastic in theory.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where the research gets a bit tricky, maybe even a little depressing.
Go on.
It seems a lot of people intellectually get the growth idea. They like it.
Mm-hmm.
But the second stress hits,
Uh-huh.
they default right back to fixed thinking. Like their boss criticizes their work, and the first thought isn't, data point for improvement. It's, oh God, I'm incompetent.
That knee-jerk fixed reaction, that's exactly why digging into mindset is so crucial. We have to look at the consequences of that fixed self-perception.
Okay.
Because studies show again and again, people are generally pretty terrible at estimating their own abilities. We misjudge our strengths, our weaknesses.
All right.
But guess who misestimates the most inaccurately?
Let me guess. The fixed mindset folks.
Bingo. Specifically, those with the fixed mindset are the most likely to hold these sort of inflated, inaccurate views of their own assets.
Wait, that seems counterintuitive. I thought a fixed mindset would make you more pessimistic about yourself. Why inflate?
Ah, because they have to protect that fixed image. See, if they admit they're weak in an area, in their mind, they're admitting a permanent flaw in their fundamental self.
Ooh, okay. That's high stakes.
Very. So they have to maintain this high level of self-validation just to keep that fixed image from cracking, which means they avoid honest self-assessment. They shy away from challenging tasks where they might look bad. They don't seek out helpful feedback.
Because it might challenge the image.
Exactly, all to prevent denting that fragile, fixed perception of competence. And the irony. This behavior actively prevents any genuine growth. It locks them into that not okay spiral because they can never actually improve the things they refuse to even acknowledge. Hashtag tag 1.2 cognitive dissonance and the drive for consistency.
Wow. Okay, so that protective mechanism that need to maintain the internal story, even if it's a negative one, that seems to lead us perfectly into the next huge psychological concept, cognitive dissonance.
Right, Leon Festinger's big idea.
Yeah, the basic premise being that we humans, we really crave consistency in our beliefs, our opinions, our behaviors. And when we feel inconsistency, that's dissonance, it creates this psychological discomfort.
It feels bad, like static in your head.
And we're intensely motivated to reduce that discomfort.
Absolutely. This drive for internal consistency. It's often stronger than our drive for, say, objective truth or even happiness sometimes.
Wow.
The classic example is post-decision dissonance. You buy something expensive, maybe complicated, like a fancy new gadget.
Okay.
Afterwards, you might get that little pang of doubt. Did I choose the right one? Especially when you think about the ones you didn't choose.
Yeah, buyer's remorse.
Exactly. So to reduce that uncomfortable feeling, what do? You immediately start looking for ads, reviews, maybe asking friends who have the same thing. Anything that confirms your choice was good.
You're looking for validation.
You're actively adding consonant cognitive elements, as Festinger called them. You're trying to make your internal world consistent by validating that past action.
Okay, so let's connect this back. If I've spent, say, 20 years believing deep down that I'm fundamentally flawed or not okay, that's a really established self-cognition.
A major one, like
Yeah.
a huge, high-stakes past decision about who you are.
So my brain will treat that belief like the expensive gadget. It'll work just as hard to justify that belief.
That's the really insidious part of dissonance when it comes to self-worth, yes.
So it'll actually seek out data points that confirm my inadequacy, just to maintain that cognitive consistency, even though the belief itself makes me miserable.
That's precisely how it can work. The brain prioritizes consistency. It will work tirelessly to justify the status quo, even if the status quo is, I'm not okay.
How does it do that? What does dissonance reduction look like in this context?
Well, a few ways. We might change how we think about the alternatives. So we emphasize the positives of our chosen belief. Maybe the flawed self feels familiar, predictable, less scary than trying to be competent.
So better the devil you know.
Kind of. And we simultaneously minimize the appeal of the rejected option. The idea that you could be competent or worthy feels uncomfortable, dissonant, maybe even arrogant, so we downplay it.
Find ways to make the not okay belief feel necessary or inevitable.
Exactly. Finding commonalities or cognitive overlap to make those self-defeating parts feel like they fit, like they belong. It's basically filtering reality through a screen designed for consistency, not necessarily for accuracy or growth.
Which also explains that really scary thing, information avoidance.
Absolutely terrifying, yeah. When someone experiences high dissonance related to their self-concept, their sense of who they are, they're often driven to aggressively seek out information that confirms their existing view, maybe hanging out with people who also feel inadequate or constantly focusing on their mistakes.
And they actively avoid anything that might challenge it.
Yes, actively avoid information that could increase their discomfort. For someone with low self-worth, this could mean avoiding positive feedback, ducking opportunities for promotion, maybe even pushing away people who genuinely praise them.
Because accepting that positive evidence would create this massive internal conflict, this dissonance with their long-held belief of being inadequate.
Exactly. It requires far less psychological effort to just maintain the miserable but consistent status quo than it does to undertake the huge upheaval of believing something positive about yourself and having to rewrite your entire internal script.
Wow. It's almost like that feeling of being chronically not okay becomes like a twisted kind of comfort zone.
A comfort zone we actively, fiercely protect.
Until we consciously decide to interrupt that mechanism.
That's the crucial step, recognizing it and deciding to change it.
Okay, so we've established that internally, we're kind of wired to protect our existing self-view, even if it's a negative one,
Mm.
thanks to things like mindset and cognitive dissonance.
Hmm.
But our sense of worth isn't built in a vacuum, right?
No,
It's constantly being tested, sometimes eroded by external forces, by our relationships.
definitely. The outside world plays a huge role.
So let's look at how those external pressures can actively pull us away from feeling, I'm okay. Hashtag tag tag 2.1, the shadow of external authority and forced compliance.
Right, and this brings us neatly to the idea of forced compliance.
Forced compliance. Okay, what's that?
It's basically acting in a way that goes against your own deeply held private beliefs or convictions, usually because of some kind of external pressure.
Like from a boss or
Eh,
maybe social pressure.
Exactly. An authority figure, cultural expectations, even just your peer group. And this creates a really painful conflict, right? Between the public behavior you're showing and the private belief you still hold about yourself or the situation.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly stressful. What kinds of things drive this split between public action and private belief?
Usually it boils down to power dynamics. Two main conditions pop up in the research. First, the threat of punishment.
Okay.
If you're coerced, threatened with negative consequences if you don't comply, you might publicly change your behavior. But crucially, you absolutely hang on to your original private beliefs. You change what you do, not what you think.
So you're just going through the motions.
Pretty much. The second condition is the offer of reward.
Ah, the carrot instead of the stick.
Exactly. Compliance happens when there's an attractive external reward on offer money, status, social acceptance. But again, it often leads to this public performance that masks a private, unconvinced self.
So imagine someone who already has that baseline, I'm not okay, feeling inside. They get forced to comply, maybe act confident to get a promotion they don't feel they deserve.
Yeah,
That gap, that dissonance between the confident act and the internal feeling of being a fraud, that must be absolutely crushing.
it is. And it connects directly to some of the most, well, frankly, chilling research in psychology, thinking about Milgram's studies on obedience to authority.
Oh, right, the shock experiments.
It's the very same. What those experiments showed starkly was that a deep-seated sense of duty or just the explicit instructions from the researcher, the authority figure, to continue,
Yeah.
it overrode the participants' own internal moral compass, their own distress.
People kept going, even when they were clearly upset.
Deeply upset. They showed clear physical and emotional agony, trembling, nervous laughter, sweating, pleading to stop. But the majority continued administering the shocks. Their own self-respect, their internal ethics were just brutally suppressed by that external authority structure.
That's terrifying. But how do they handle the dissonance? The conflict between, I'm a good person, I shouldn't hurt people, and I am actively hurting someone.
That's the key psychological mechanism we have to understand. They resolve the dissonance, but usually not by stopping the behavior.
How then?
By shifting the responsibility away from themselves, they rationalized, I was just following orders. The experimenter told me it was necessary. He's responsible, not me.
They changed their thinking about their role.
Exactly. They changed to cognition, I am responsible for this person's pain, to a more consonant one. The authority figure is responsible, I am merely an instrument. This act of externalizing responsibility. It's how authority can systematically chip away at an individual's internal I'm okay stance. It teaches you, subtly or not so subtly, that your own internal compass is less reliable, less important than the external demand.
And applying that today,
Yeah.
that external demand isn't always a guy in a lab coat. Sometimes it's just the pressure from our social group, right?
Absolutely. Social groups are an incredibly powerful resource for managing dissonance. Think about it. If I feel fundamentally uncertain or conflicted about myself, maybe my worth, I naturally seek confirmation of my existing beliefs from others who seem to agree with me. If I secretly believe I'm flawed, I might gravitate towards groups or friends who also seem to share or validate that kind of negative worldview.
Adding those consonant cognitive elements again.
Precisely. It reinforces the belief. When dissonance is high, people are driven to engage much more intensely with those who echo their views. This helps explain why certain destructive patterns like constant complaining or self-pity loops or even staying in unhealthy group dynamics can become so entrenched. The social group provides confirmation bias that actively prevents growth and keeps you stuck in not okay, hashtag tag tag 2.2 relational dynamics and blaming the self.
Okay, let's shift focus now to maybe the most common arena where that sense of worth gets really tested, maybe even decimated, our intimate relationship.
Ah, yes. the emotional battleground.
This feels like where that I'm not okay position often shows up most painfully,
Yeah.
especially when we talk about insecure attachment styles.
The anxious attachment style is almost a textbook example of this dynamic in action.
Right.
These individuals, they fundamentally crave intimacy and closeness. That's their core need.
Right.
But they are also hypervigilant, highly sensitive to any perceived threat to that closeness. It could be a text message that takes too long to arrive, a comment they misinterpret, a slight change in tone.
Tiny things can feel huge.
Exactly. And this sensitivity often leads them to, well, less than ideal coping mechanisms, maybe acting out, showing jealousy, creating drama, which ironically only compounds their distress and often pushes the partner away, making them feel even less worthy.
And there's that tragic loop, isn't there, where people sometimes mistake this volatility, this intense up and down.
Yeah.
They get kind of hooked on the highs and lows. They confuse the panic and adrenaline of an activated attachment system, basically, the fear of abandonment with genuine passion or deep love.
That is such a common trap. They find themselves drawn to emotional unavailability because, on some level, it confirms their deep, often unexamined belief that love is something you have to fight for, something that isn't freely given. It feels familiar.
Which sets them up for, well, more pain.
And this is where the self-blame really kicks into high gear. Let's say the anxious individual trying to attract a partner by following some of that questionable dating advice out there.
Like play hard to get, act mysterious.
Right. Suppress your genuine need for closeness. Act unavailable. When they do that, they often attract a very specific type of partner.
The avoidant one.
Exactly. They're performing an inauthentic self to attract someone who inherently struggles with intimacy and closeness. It's almost creating a guaranteed feedback loop of distress from the outset.
Okay, so they attract the avoidant partner, and the avoidant partner, true to form, uses those classic distancing strategies, right? Needing space, ever intimacy, finding fault, withdrawing.
Pulling back emotionally or physically,
Yeah.
needing to create separation.
How does the anxious partner typically internalize that withdrawal?
They almost always internalize it as complete and utter proof of their own inadequacy. The immediate thought process is self-blame. If only I were more attractive, or if I were more interesting, or less needy.
That my partner would surely want to be closer. They wouldn't be pulling away like this with me.
Precisely. It's the absolute pinnacle of the I'm not okay, you're okay, but you'd be better off with someone else. Relational stance. They believe they are the variable. Their flaw is the reason for the distance.
But what's the crucial realization? The thing that can actually shift the balance and start moving them towards feeling I'm okay in that dynamic.
The game-changing realization is understanding that the partner's need for distance, it's an internal pattern for them. It's their way of relating, and it will likely always manifest, no matter who they are with.
So it's not personal.
It's fundamentally not about the anxious partner's worth. It's about the avoidant partner's discomfort with sustained closeness, their own patterns, their own history. Once that really sinks in, that the withdrawal isn't a reflection of your inadequacy, but a function of their pattern,
Then you can stop blaming yourself.
you stop blaming yourself for the relationship problems. And maybe for the first time, you can recognize that your own fundamental needs for closeness, for reassurance, for security are actually legitimate and healthy. The core problem isn't your inadequacy. It's often about basic incompatibility or mismatched needs and strategies.
Okay, so if the traps we fall into are things like the fixed mindset, that relentless drive for cognitive consistency, the pull of external authority, and that horrible self-blame cycle in relationships,
A minefield.
then the path out, the way toward building that secure I'm okay, you're okay stance must be anchored in something like radical self-acceptance, setting legitimate boundaries.
Absolutely. Building that secure internal foundation is key. Hashtag TAC 3.1, establishing legitimate needs and authentic self. And the very first step feels like, well, like a psychological declaration of independence. You have to fundamentally accept your attachment needs are legitimate. They're biological reality.
Weaknesses, not character flaws.
Not at all. We are literally wired, it's part of our genetic makeup to depend on close others, especially a primary attachment figure. We have to stop framing these core human needs as some kind of personal failing.
That's a big reframe for many people.
It is, and think about it. A genuinely healthy, secure relationship should actually make you feel more self-confident, more capable, more autonomous in the world. It should provide a sense of peace, a secure base.
So if your current relationship dynamic consistently makes you feel less confident, more anxious, less like yourself,
That's a huge red flag that the foundation is unsound. It's not supporting your okayness.
and that reframe totally dismantles all that toxic dating advice that tells people, especially women often, to suppress their needs, right?
Completely. It exposes it as counterproductive if genuine connection is the goal. We must strive to remain true to our authentic selves in relationships, trying to play games, acting mysterious, pretending you don't need closeness when you do.
What does it actually achieve?
It achieves one main thing. It attracts partners who are fundamentally uncomfortable with genuine intimacy, deep commitment, and vulnerability. Usually, the avoidance.
So you end up attracting the very dynamic that confirms your fear that your needs are too much.
Exactly. That approach, often sold as a path to happiness, actually guarantees you stay stuck in the I'm not okay cycle, feeling perpetually misunderstood or unmet. Real happiness, real security relies on transparency. It relies on clearly communicating your attachment needs, not on manipulation or game playing.
Okay, let's talk about that language of needs then. What does clear communication actually look like in practice for someone trying to embody this I'm okay, you're okay stance?
It means owning your requirements, but calmly and respectfully. For someone who tends towards anxious patterns, this means learning to articulate the need for reassurance, for signs of love, respect, or security, without resorting to accusations, protests, or emotional attacks.
So instead of why are you always ignoring me, which triggers defensiveness.
Right. You might say something like, hey, I know you're busy, but I start feeling a bit insecure or disconnected when we don't check in during the day. Would you be open to just a quick text? It really helps me feel connected. You state the feeling, the trigger, and a specific constructive request.
Okay. And what about for someone with more avoidant patterns? How do they communicate their needs clearly within an I'm okay, you're okay frame? Because their needs are legitimate too.
Absolutely. The you're okay applies to them as well. For them, it means clearly communicating their need for physical or emotional space, for separateness, without making the other person feel blamed or rejected for that need.
So not just shutting down or disappearing.
No. They might say something like, I really need about an hour to myself just to decompress after work. It helps me recharge. After that, I'd love to connect and hear about your day. It owns the need, explains it briefly, and offers connection later.
The real power here seems to be establishing that both sets of needs, the need for closeness and the need for separateness, are legitimate.
Yep.
But they must be communicated clearly, respectfully, and without blame. This feels like the core of the adult position in the relationship, recognizing your own needs as valid while also respecting the other person's needs and boundaries. Hashtag tag 3.2, activating self-compassion as an inner anchor.
Okay, so we've asserted the legitimacy of our relational needs. Now, moving inward, we need to anchor that sense of self with something powerful. Self-compassion.
Self-compassion. This gets talked about a lot, but sometimes it's misunderstood, right? Like it's just being soft on yourself or making excuses.
It's often mischaracterized that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Seen as self-pity or letting yourself off the hook. But the research, particularly from Kristen Neff and others, shows it's actually one of the most powerful psychological resources we have for building inner strength, resilience, and that stable I'm okay feeling.
Okay, so what are the core components? Let's start with what's sometimes called tender self-compassion.
Right, the nurturing aspect.
Yeah.
There are three main interconnected components. First is self-kindness. This means actively comforting and soothing yourself when you're distressed. Treating yourself with the same care and understanding you'd offer a dear friend who was suffering. Not beating yourself up.
Instead of the harsh inner critic.
Exactly. The second component is common humanity.
Common humanity.
Recognizing that imperfection, failure, making mistakes, feeling pain, these are not your personal flaws. They are part of the shared, universal human experience. Everyone struggles. Everyone messes up.
So when you fail at something, instead of I'm such an idiot, it's more like, this is a human moment. This happens.
Precisely. It directly counteracts that fixed mindset tendency to personalize failure and make it about your fundamental worth. It connects you to others instead of isolating you in shame.
Okay, kindness, common humanity. What's the third?
The third is mindfulness.
Yeah.
Not in a complex meditative sense necessarily, but simply being aware of your suffering in the present moment without judgment.
Just noticing it.
Noticing it, acknowledging it. This is anxiety, or wow, that feels like shame, but without immediately getting swept away by it or desperately trying to fix it or push it away. You observe it with some balance.
So you don't over-identify with the feeling.
Exactly. You allow it to be there without letting it define your entire reality in that moment. So together, these three, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, they create what Neff calls a loving, connected presence for yourself. It allows you to be psychologically bigger than your temporary pain or your perceived flaws.
Okay, that's the tender side. But you mentioned resilience and strength. This is where the idea of fierce self-compassion comes in.
Exactly. This is crucial. Compassion isn't passive. It isn't weak. It needs a backbone. Fierce self-compassion involves harnessing the protective and action-oriented aspects of compassion.
Like what? Anger.
It can involve the courage to be open to feelings like constructive anger, even righteous rage sometimes. Not for the purpose of lashing out destructively, but to use that energy.
Use it how?
To motivate action, to protect yourself, to set boundaries, to speak up against injustice. Fierce self-compassion acts as a safe haven internally, giving you the strength and courage to then engage assertively with what needs to change in your life, in your relationships, maybe even in the world. It fosters strength, resilience, the ability to say no.
It's saying no to things that violate your integrity or well-being. That feels like a profound affirmation of I'm okay.
It absolutely is. It's saying my needs, my boundaries, my well-being matter, and this connects directly to overcoming shame.
Right. Shame feels like the ultimate psychological enemy of feeling worthy.
It really is. Brené Brown defines shame as that intensely painful universal fear of being unlovable, of being unworthy of connection. It's the core feeling behind I am fundamentally flawed.
And the path out of shame, according to the research.
It requires vulnerability. The only path to shame resilience is to bring it out of the shadows, to externalize it, talk about it, share it with trusted others. Shame thrives in silence, secrecy, and judgment.
The less we talk about it.
The more control it has over our lives. Self-compassion, both tender and fierce, provides that essential inner safety, that safe haven that makes it possible to break the silence, to share our stories, and expose the shame to the light of empathy and common humanity.
So, practically speaking, integrating this into our daily lives means really prioritizing ourselves, not in a selfish way, but
As a necessary act of psychological survival and well-being, yes. It means adopting a genuinely balanced approach. Judging your own needs for rest, for time, for energy, for money, for focus as having equal weight in your decisions alongside the needs of others.
not always putting yourself last.
Right. It means consciously aligning your daily activities with your core personal values. It means including yourself fully in the circle of compassion that you might more easily extend to others. If you cannot accept and care for yourself, you simply cannot maintain a stable I'm okay stance in relation to the world.
Okay, self-compassion gives us that internal anchor, that safe haven. But we still need the engine running day to day to actually maintain this I'm okay program, especially when things get tough.
Exactly. We need the behavioral tools.
And this seems like where learned optimism, the work of Martin Seligman, becomes really crucial, especially for disrupting that consistent negative internal narrative we talked about earlier with dissonance.
Absolutely. Learn optimism is all about shifting the focus. It's not about ignoring adversity. It's about changing your interpretation of that adversity. Seligman uses the ABC model.
ABC. Okay.
A is the adversity, the setback, the challenge, the difficult event. B is your beliefs about that adversity, what you tell yourself about why it happened and what it means. And C is the consequences, your feelings and actions that result from those beliefs.
So the key insight is that C doesn't come directly from A.
Precisely. Your emotions and actions stem primarily from your beliefs about the adversity, not from the adversity itself.
And this explains why some people bounce back and others get stuck.
Exactly. Optimists, according to the research, consistently tend to do better than expected. Not because they're inherently luckier or smarter, necessarily, but because when they face a challenge, A, their beliefs, B, are different. They tend to see setbacks as temporary, specific to the situation, and often caused by external factors or things they can change.
So they try harder.
They try harder. They persist because they believe their efforts can make a difference. Pessimists, on the other hand, tend to believe, B, that setbacks are permanent, it's always going to be like this, pervasive, it's going to ruin everything, and personal, it's all my fault.
So they give up, C.
They give up more easily when they fail because their beliefs tell them failure is inevitable and reflects a fundamental flaw in them. Their I'm not okay belief gets reinforced.
Okay, so the emotion, the sadness after a rejection, the anxiety about a mistake, it doesn't come straight from the event itself, but from those automatic, often pessimistic beliefs we attach to it.
That's the core idea.
So the tool for dismantling this, for building optimism, is something called disputation.
Disputation. That's the primary technique for cognitive change in this model. It
Hmm.
means actively, forcefully challenging those negative automatic beliefs the moment they pop up.
Like arguing with yourself.
In a structured way, yes.
Yes.
So when that thought comes, I completely ruined that presentation, I am totally worthless, you have to stop. You catch the belief,
Hmm.
and then you actively dispute it. Ask yourself questions.
Like what?
Is this belief really accurate? Where's the hard evidence for totally worthless? Are there alternative explanations for why the presentation didn't go perfectly? Maybe the audience was tired, maybe the tech failed. What are the actual realistic implications if I accept this belief versus challenging it?
Okay, but what if the belief has some truth? Like, okay, I didn't ruin everything, but I genuinely did mess up that key part of the presentation.
That's a great question. If the core belief is accurate, the focus shifts entirely. It moves away from global self-worth condemnation, I am worthless,
Hmm.
and towards practical problem solving or strategic change.
So it becomes, okay, I messed up that section. What can I learn? I need better preparation on that specific data point next time.
Exactly, it becomes constructive. But the key insight from Seligman's work is that usually those instantaneous negative beliefs are massive distortions. They're catastrophic exaggerations. And they absolutely should not be allowed to run your emotional life unchecked.
So it's about building the habit of disputing them.
Yes, treating your own negative self-talk like you would a biased, unreliable, maybe even hostile source of information. Once you get into that habit, learned optimism and a more stable sense of I'm okay become much, much easier to maintain.
This all seems to hinge, though, on our ability to stay flexible. We talked earlier about how habits, even good ones, can lock us into old patterns.
That's right. Habits are incredibly useful for efficiency, but their downside is rigidity. If we're consciously trying to adopt a new psychological position, like shifting from not okay to I'm okay, we absolutely cannot afford to be locked into old, rigid ways of thinking or behaving that undermine that goal.
So we need psychological flexibility.
Psychological suppleness, perhaps. There's that great line often attributed to the Tao Te Ching. Men are born soft and supple. Dead, they are stiff and hard. The soft and supple prevail over the hard and stiff. Meaning life is constant change. Our circumstances change, we change. We need to periodically check in. Are my old habits, my old beliefs, my old ways of reacting still actually serving the person I am trying to be now, the okay self I'm building? Or are they just leftover stiffness from a previous state?
And if we identify those old, stiff, destructive habits that keep perpetuating feelings of worthlessness, things like, I don't know, constantly checking at X's social media, or that habitual negative self-talk loop, or maybe emotional eating,
Yeah, those patterns that reinforce not okay.
we can actually use the science of habit formation, but in reverse to break them.
Exactly. This is where we can bring in some clear behavioral science, like James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change, but we flip them. To stop a bad habit that's undermining your okayness, you invert the laws.
Okay, how? Law 1 is make it obvious. So the inverse is,
Make it invisible. Reduce your exposure to the cues that trigger the bad habit. If checking social media makes you feel inadequate, hide the apps, log out, put the phone away. If the scale triggers negative self-talk, put it away. Remove the trigger from your environment as much as possible.
okay, Law 2 is make it attractive. Inverse.
Make it unattractive. You need to reframe your mindset. Focus intensely on the long-term negative consequences of a habit, the ways it undermines your goal of feeling okay. Highlight the benefits of avoiding the habit rather than dwelling on any fleeting, immediate gratification it might offer. Make the cost feel high.
Got it. Law 3 is make it easy. So the inverse is key.
Make it difficult. This is about increasing friction. Add steps between you and the bad habit. If you want to stop impulsive online shopping when you feel down, remove saved credit card info. Require complex passwords. If you want to stop sending reactive text, maybe put your phone in another room for certain periods or turn it off. Make it harder to do the thing you want to stop.
And the last one, make it satisfying. The inverse is, well, that seems tied to make it unattractive. But Clear also talks about commitment devices here for breaking bad habits.
Yes. Using commitment devices is crucial for making bad habits difficult and unsatisfying in the long run. A commitment device is basically a choice you make in the present moment to lock yourself into better behavior in the future or restrict your ability to engage in the bad habit.
Like what?
It could be telling a friend your goal so you have accountability. It could be installing website blocking software. It could be setting up automatic transfers to savings before you get paid so you can't spend impulsively, or even deliberately self-excluding from social situations, trigger unhealthy coping mechanisms.
So you're using your wise mind now to protect your future self from impulsive moments.
Exactly. These specific, deliberate actions create an environment and structure that actively supports the I'm okay stance. It makes a desired state the path of least resistance, behaviorally speaking. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, this has been quite a journey through the psychology of self-worth. A really deep dive. We started by really looking at the psychological costs of operating from that default I'm not okay position, often anchored, as we saw, by a fixed mindset that makes every setback feel like a final judgment on our worth.
Right. And how our own brains can work against us through cognitive dissonance, trying to maintain consistency even with negative self-beliefs.
And then we looked outward at how external pressures, whether it's authority figures demanding compliance or difficult relational dynamics, especially with avoidant partners, can chip away at our sense of inherent worth, often leading to self-blame.
But then we charted the path toward consciously choosing and maintaining that healthier stance. I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah, which requires, as we discussed, really recognizing our core attachment needs as legitimate, not as flaws.
And actively cultivating both sides of self-compassion, the tender side for soothing and connection, and the fierce side for protection and boundary setting as a way to manage shame and build resilience.
And finally, putting it all into action. Using the behavioral engine of learned optimism, disputing those negative thoughts, and deliberately building flexibility while using habit-breaking strategies to dismantle the patterns that keep us stuck.
It really underscores that achieving this sense of okayness, it's not usually about a single aha moment or epiphany. It's a continual process. It demands ongoing, critical self-analysis, deep acceptance of our needs and imperfections, and frankly, the discipline to keep choosing growth, keep choosing healthier behaviors, even when it's hard. It's a practice.
A daily practice. And as we wrap up, maybe let's touch on the highest stakes of this internal journey, the connection to meaning and purpose in life. We talked briefly about the kind of psychological misery that can arise when we try to live up to these impossible universal ethical demands. You mentioned Freud's observation about the command to love thy neighbor as thyself, how it can feel unpsychological, almost impossible to fulfill perfectly.
Right. Trying to achieve some kind of universal, abstract goodness or perfection, it often backfires. It risks either rebellion against the impossible standard or developing a kind of neurosis because the target is simply unattainable for mere mortals.
But there's a contrast to that, isn't there, in the work of someone like Viktor Frankl?
Yes, absolutely. Frankl's logotherapy offers a different perspective. He emphasized that individuals shouldn't necessarily seek some grand, abstract, universal meaning of life. Instead, we should focus on finding the specific, concrete, unique meaning of our own existence at any particular moment.
Meaning found in the specific tasks at hand.
Exactly. In our work, in our love, in our courage during suffering. The sense of worth, the sense of meaning is found not in achieving abstract perfection, but in our responsible engagement with the unique demands of our own real lives.
So perhaps the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry forward from this deep dive is this. How can you, starting today, focus more on finding the specific meaning in your unique tasks, your immediate challenges, your current responsibilities, and how can you allow that specific unique purpose fulfilled moment by moment to be enough to feel okay?
Without perhaps provoking that neurosis Frankl warned about, by constantly measuring yourself against impossible universal ideals of external perfection or worthiness.
That shift from seeking universal validation to fulfilling your specific unique role right here, right now, maybe that's the final, most profound step toward establishing a true, secure, and resilient sense of self-worth, that deep inner knowing, I'm okay.